I make most of our meals at home, and trust me, that's not because I have tons of time on my hands and nothing else to do other than cook. I want to show you some of the strategies that I use to meal plan, meal prep, and to make homemade meals. One of the most important things that you can do if you are planning to cook at home a little bit more is to have some sort of a meal plan. All of these things that I'm going to talk about, I like to think that the strategies are a little unique. My way of approaching meal plans and meal prepping is maybe not what you think about when you think of those terms. So when I say that I meal plan for the week, I don't have a menu board that says on Monday we're eating this for dinner and on Tuesday we're having this for dinner. I approach it more by having a running list of meals that I want to make. Usually it's more than a week's worth, and I keep adding to it and keep growing that list and just move through the list. But I have my eyes set on maybe 5 or so meals for that given week. And I take that list and that's what I use to grocery shop. So for those about 4 or 5 plus meals at a time, I will go and get my ingredients. And then when I get home from the grocery store, that's when I start to create the list in order. Again, not assigning days to things, because what I'll get to in a second is I do cook larger batches of meals sometimes. We take advantage of leftovers, so I don't know if I cook something on Monday, if it's also going to be enough food for Tuesday dinner, or if I'm going to need to cook something new for Tuesday. I just take that list and put it in order of how I'm going to cook that week. And the way that I determine the order of how I'm going to cook depends on a few different things. So first of all, it's going to depend on the freshness of ingredients that I purchase. So that's why I like to wait till after I get home from the grocery store, because if I have a plan to cook something on Friday and I went grocery shopping over the weekend, and let's say I'm going to cook burgers or something, and I buy ground beef at the grocery store, and the ground beef that they had there expires in 2 days. I'm not going to be able to make it until Friday to cook that ground beef before the meat expires. So I'm going to want to cook that a little bit earlier in the week. Or if you buy fresh produce, sometimes produce looks a little bit better or worse than you expected. So that's going to affect things as well. In general, I have an idea that there are some meals that have more pantry or shelf stable items in them, or items from the freezer, heartier vegetables like potatoes. Those I know will probably be meals that I cook later on the week, and things that have fresher, more delicate ingredients like fresh herbs might be something that I will cook earlier in the week. But again, you never know what you're gonna find at the grocery store and what expiration dates you're gonna see and the state of the goods. Another thing that's really, really important to factor in is what you have going on in the week. I pay attention to my schedule, my husband's schedule, my child's schedule, and what's going on. So I work from home. A lot of times I can prep food and really be involved in cooking dinner right before the family is going to eat, and I can be cooking things and it can go straight from the stove or the oven to the dinner table. Other times I'm out and about, I might be picking up my son from daycare or doing other things that I don't have a lot of time right before dinner. Those meals might be better for slow cookers or things that I can completely prep in advance and then just pop in the oven or something like that. So I keep those in mind with schedule. And the third factor, which in my mind is the least important, is trying to have a variance in the meals. So I don't like to have 2 chicken dishes back to back, or if there's 2 pasta dishes that you're cooking in a week, I don't want to have pasta and then cook another pasta dish. I try and alternate between heavy meals and lighter meals like a salad, and just create that balance of a meal plan. But the most important things are making sure your ingredients are going to last, and that's a part of the order in which you're cooking, as well as your schedule. Those 2 are for sure the most important. I mentioned there slow cooker recipes or things that you can prep in advance, like a sheet pan meal or something. When you're selecting the meals that become part of that list that you're pulling from for your meal plan for the week, I really like to also make sure that I'm not getting in over my head. I am somebody who enjoys to cook, so I find a lot of pleasure in trying new recipes, and I'm always pulling out new recipes and like things that are maybe a little bit more on the complicated side. So that means I need to be conscious of that and make sure I'm not signing myself up for too much work. Again, we are trying to just get some healthy homemade meals on the table for our families. We're not trying to win awards here, so I don't want to have 5 different complicated meals that I'm cooking over the week. It might be nice to have one meal that's a little bit nicer or a little bit more time intensive. And then you also want to have a few meals that are your staples, that you've cooked a few times before. You know how to cook them. You don't have to be very deep in the recipe, wasting your time figuring out how to do new things. And it's great to have those family staples and things that your family looks forward to because they've had before, you know they love them, and you can keep those things on rotation, just spread them out a little bit so you're not always doing the same thing every single week if your family likes to have a little bit of variance. On the other end of not having meals that are overly complicated, make sure you have some meals that are extremely easy. Slow cooker recipes or Instant Pot recipes are always really simple go-tos. They're not overly time consuming, especially in terms of in the moment. There's a lot of things you can do to prep in advance and then just dump everything in there, set it and forget it when it comes to things like the slow cooker or pressure cooker, or even one pot or sheet pan meals. One pot meals, sheet pan meals, the slow cooker, all of those things also can sometimes reduce the amount of dishes. And when you are strapped on time for whatever reason, having less dishes and less to clean up will also incentivize you to do a little bit more home cooking. One of my biggest strategies, and I get questions about this all the time because I like to share what I'm cooking on Instagram, and I have people messaging me often saying, why are your meals so big? How many people are you feeding? Because it's just my husband and I, and we have a toddler. So he's having a little bit of what we're eating, but honestly not much. The reason I do that is because we like leftovers. And I know some people are weird about leftovers, but if you are really trying to get into doing more home cooking, trying to save money, not go out to eat at lunch when you are at work, or if you stay at home or you work from home and you want to still have something healthy and easy, and we're moving towards this cooking at home mentality, leftovers really have to be your friend. Oftentimes the way we do it is whatever we had left over from dinner, that tends to be our lunch for the next day. And as I said at the beginning, sometimes it'll take us to the next meal as well. So sometimes it'll take us to the next dinner. Just never fully know, depending on what I cook and how hungry both of us are. So I try and be as flexible as possible, but know that cooking a larger portion usually pays off, and it means that the two of us have lunch for the next day. I also pack meals for our son at daycare and will use leftovers in his lunchbox as well. Let's talk about meal prepping, because I think the way that I do it, again, is not the most traditional way of meal prepping. I think of meal prepping in three main categories. The first one is probably the most traditional when you think of meal prepping. If you go to Pinterest or Google and you're looking up meal prepping or meal prepping recipes, you'll see a lot of those divided food storage containers and everything all stacked up perfectly nice and neat for the entire week, all in your refrigerator. That's not what I tend to do. That method I think of as fully cooked meals. I like doing that for snacks a lot of times, having fully prepped snacks, something that's easy to grab throughout the day, that's healthy. Those types of things are really helpful to have in your refrigerator. But although I said I like leftovers, I don't like things that are cooked too far in advance, and you have to think about shelf life. If you cook a chicken dish, that's not going to last you until the end of the week. Cooked chicken doesn't stay good in the refrigerator for that many days. It's not going to last you a whole week. And I like to, in general, have the meal fresh from the stove, fresh from the oven, fresh from the grill, wherever it is, for the first time I'm eating it. And then I'm okay with having leftovers, but don't love the idea of basically everything I'm eating has already been previously cooked and I'm constantly putting things in the microwave and reheating them or eating them cold. That doesn't sound as appealing to me personally. If you don't mind that, go for it. I do typically grocery shop over the weekend and think about all of this on more of a Monday through Sunday cycle. So oftentimes I have more time on the weekends and we'll cook a big meal on Sunday, and that sets us up to have a pre-cooked meal in the refrigerator, ready to have leftovers when Monday rolls around. So in that sense, I do meal prep on the weekends and have a cooked meal and have our lunches packed and ready to go for the week. But it is one at a time type of thing. So I have one meal that is fully cooked and prepped at a time, rather than cooking 4 different meals at once and eating them throughout the week. The second big category of meal prep that I do really like is more of an ingredient prep style. There's a really great way to meal prep in terms of having a lot of little ingredients, and then you create these dishes and bowls and plates with all of the little ingredients. So maybe you have some chopped up veggies and you create some sauces, maybe a few cooked up proteins, and then you combine them all together to make this really interesting meal. And that's what you're eating throughout the week. Less traditional in the sense of following a specific recipe, but more having those ingredients prepped. The other way of doing the ingredient prep strategy is to have ingredients prepped for the recipes that you have throughout the week. So let's say you're making fajitas and you're gonna have a veggie mix that you're gonna cook up. You might wanna chop your bell peppers and your onions in advance and leave those in the refrigerator ready to go. This strategy bleeds into the third bucket, which is what I typically do, and I'm gonna show you in my refrigerator in a second here. But I try and prep as much as I can of each and every meal in advance. And that's taking it as far as I can with keeping the ingredients as fresh as possible and really keeping in mind that some ingredients are better to be washed and prepped in advance and other ingredients don't do as well when you make them in advance. So it's a fine balance looking at every recipe and seeing how far I can take it. This strategy is great for people who have extra time in different pockets throughout either the day or throughout the week. So if you're trying to cook healthy meals, healthy dinners for your family throughout the week, but you're really busy during the week and you have more time over the weekend, maybe you can do some of that prepping over the weekend. If you are busy in the evenings and you have a little bit of extra time in your morning or later at night right before bed, you could prep things at bedtime before for the full next day or throughout the rest of the week. It's all about finding when you have the most time, because often the stress is brought on at the end of the day. We've all been really busy and you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, it's almost dinner time. I'm starting this recipe from scratch. How am I gonna get this all done? I have a million other things going on. And if you have other spots throughout your day and week, which we all hopefully do, where they're less stressful, take advantage of that and make it easier on yourself when it comes to actual dinner time. So I'm in my refrigerator right now, gonna quickly show you. I have one meal up here that I cooked last night, and this is something that we're actually gonna be able to have for dinner again tonight. And I keep things in the pot sometimes if there's still a lot of food. Sometimes I'll put it into a smaller food storage container, but it is great to have those meals fully cooked in there and ready for you. If you're going to follow the third method that I'm doing, I have some more examples of things that I have prepped over the weekend. Today it's Monday, so I have things ready to go for the next few days. I have a grilled cheese recipe that I'm gonna cook. I also had in the refrigerator here some tomato soup that's sitting in a pot. It was previously made and frozen. I love taking advantage of the freezer, and I froze the leftover tomato soup in these super cubes. It's a silicone tray that comes in a bunch of different sizes. I'll link them in the description box below, as well as a full video I've done on freezer cooking in general and a lot of the products that I use. But I popped those out and I'm letting them thaw in the container that I'm going to cook them in, and it looks weird to have a pot in my refrigerator, just like it looked weird to have that other pan in there, but it's less dishes, and then it's gonna be so easy just to grab it from the refrigerator. It's had time to thaw out from the freezer, and I can stick it straight on the stove top that way. Then for the grilled cheese, it's kind of a complicated grilled cheese recipe. I can also link it too. It's our favorite grilled cheese recipe, but I've gone ahead and prepped all the grilled cheese. This is like it's kind of foggy from the refrigerator, but it's 2 layers deep. There's multiple cheeses in there. It's pre-buttered. It has everything bagel seasoning on it and Parmesan cheese on the outside of both sides. I've also prepped some for our son, which have less of the crazy ingredients because ours has thyme and basil in it and fresh tomatoes and stuff. So this, I am gonna grab again the tomato soup, put it on the stove top. I'm gonna grab a skillet of some sort and then just start cooking these up, and that's the entire meal. I have a crock pot meal that I'm gonna cook, and the day that I'm gonna do this, I am gonna be out and about, and my husband is probably gonna be back home before I am. So it is a 2-part crock pot meal. I have everything in the crock pot part that I'm gonna use, and this is the first part. So it has, like, if you can see there, raw chicken and all of the different ingredients that will start cooking in there. Again, my chicken was also frozen, so that was a great way for it to thaw out in the refrigerator. And I will set this in the morning, start the slow cooking process. And then when there's about 15 minutes left, you're supposed to add in some cheese and broccoli and other ingredients. So I prepped all of that in another container and measured it in advance. When my husband gets home and I'm still out and about, he can dump this in there, give it a little stir, and when I come home, then we will all be ready to eat, and it'll be so super simple. And that's just an example of, even though a crock pot recipe is really easy typically, sometimes there are those two-part stages where you have to add something in at the end. And I'm gonna be picking up our toddler, and the second we get home, he always wants to eat. And I don't wanna have to be measuring ingredients when he's home and still have to wait more than 15 minutes because it'll take a while for me to chop the broccoli and get everything ready. It could be another maybe 30 minutes till dinner is ready. This way I can have the meal ready when my family is ready. There are also some other recipes that you can't go quite this far, but if I can even do something like the ingredient prep in the second method I mentioned, I will do that. I will also do sauces and marinades in advance. I made a homemade pesto sauce. This is one of my favorites. It's made of peas and blended this up. It is for a marinade that I'm gonna use on steak and then grill it up. So I don't have the steak all ready to go at this point. It's already actually cubed in the freezer. So I'm just gonna thaw that out when it gets a little bit closer because I don't have all of my meals ready. Again, thinking about shelf life and expiration of things. If I thaw out all of my meat on Sunday, it's not gonna be as fresh, so I'm gonna wait a little bit later in the week, but this pesto sauce will last throughout the week, and then it is ready to go, and it's a simple marinade, and I can toss it on the grill. Hopefully that was helpful as an example of how I go as far as I can in terms of prepping for meals without fully cooking them. I also did another video where I filmed this process in depth a bit more and showed the meal prepping as well as a few different recipes. Casseroles are another great one because sometimes you can make the entire casserole and have that sitting there, and then you just throw it in the oven when it's time to go. Just keep in mind that there are some recipes that are gonna lend themselves more to this strategy, other ones where you can maybe only make a sauce or cut some veggies. But again, I look and try and do as much as I can in advance. Quick note, if you have kids and you're also doing lunch prep like I do this all in advance as well. Since it's Monday, our son Owen just used one of his lunch boxes, so I got him 3 lunch boxes, and that way on the weekend I can prep 3 lunches at a time, and then halfway through the week I'll prep a few more to get him through the end of the week. It was completely worth the investment of buying a few more lunch boxes, so I'm not the crazy mom in the morning trying to get him ready, myself ready, and also pack lunches and all of that stuff at once. I do it over the weekend, and then one evening I will do it one more time. And if you're interested in toddler meal prep and some recipe ideas, check out Sophisticated Motherhood, my other YouTube channel. I did a full video on toddler meal prep, and we'll have plenty more ideas over there as well. So that is it for today's video. If you have any specific questions about how I do it or any other thoughts, leave them in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me today, and until next time, I will see you all later.